Buenas noches, good evening with people from this part of the world, and good morning to the people from the rest of our audience in Asia and in the Pacific Rim. It's a very big pleasure for me to introduce the speaker tonight and welcome everybody to the seminar series of Indigenous Knowledge by APRU. And just before I present Fredy to you, just to remind you, in our series, we had an amazing conference last month. Diana Luisa Muñoz from the Pontificia Universidad de Chile. So without further ado, what I want to do right now is to present Fredy Grefa to you. And this evening and this morning, it's a very special morning for us. Fredy, it's even though I would like to say the first one to graduate from the university, I think he's the first indigenous Quechua from the Amazon that graduated from the university under the program that we have. But what Fredy truly represents is that he was the first indigenous student from the Amazon basin to join the university. And to me, it seems it was yesterday. And the stories that I have, the anecdotes that I have about Fredy are without much, we don't have enough time to tell you everything that has impressed me about the path that Fredy has followed to be with us tonight. So I'm going to highlight several things that I think are relevant. For starters, he was a very gifted child during school in math. And it was through that skill that several teachers were encouraging him to pursue university studies. Fredy came to the university. I never asked him how he found out that we had a program that was supposed to give scholarships to indigenous students from the Napo region, the Quito students. But he just showed up one morning at the university and said, I'm here to claim one of the scholarships. And we didn't have a procedure. And the university was so young that we knew we had this agreement. And the next thing, the chancellor of the university just called the admissions office and say, let Fredy in. And this was the beginning of several things that we didn't understand how to deal with as a university. How we were going to accommodate people like Fredy, how we were going to work with students like Fredy. And so he never had all the support that the students now they have. When he finished and he graduated with a major in geology, which we no longer offer at the university, he, on his own, started navigating on the internet and got a scholarship to go to Harvard Language Institute to improve his English because he wanted to continue studying there. And we had to start moving and knocking doors to get Fredy to the United States and do his course. And that was the beginning of Fredy going to the United States and understanding how things happen in the United States academically. And later he went to do a master's, and he came back from the master's, and he was so eager to start changing the dynamics of Quechua people with the oil industry that he even tried to start his own company with indigenous people to provide oil services to the companies. And he navigated on the private sector, but then he got called to the public sector. And he had to endure serving in the public sector in a government that had a lot of challenges, but had a lot of resources, but at the same time, didn't understand exactly how things needed to be done in indigenous territories. And that junction in there moved Fredy to the next step, which was studying a PhD program. And he went to the University of North Carolina and followed the steps of the chancellor of the university to do a PhD in the same university. And now that he finished his PhD with a lot of work and a lot of effort from not only him, but his family, his wife, who I know personally. And he is now the first indigenous student with a PhD working at Universidad San Francisco de Quito. And we are very happy as an institution because Fredy has this challenge or in his path of being always the first to do something, as he was the first one in his family to attend a university studying, being a first generation student like he is. So these are Fredy's credentials. And I'm not going to tell you what he does now in terms of research, because that's going to be his job. So I'm very happy once again, to present Fredy to you. And I know that we managed to call a very large audience from the university here in Quito as well to listen to Fredy. Just a reminder for the people in the audience, please post your questions on the chat. And when we come towards the, Fredy's going to talk for about 30 minutes. And then we will have these questions that can be asked, and we will pull from the chat so that you can share or ask more information about what Fredy is going to tell us tonight. So, Fredy, buenas noches, bienvenido. Alituta, it's your time now.
Hola David, hola a todos. Alituta, quisiera hablar primeramente en mi idioma quichua, que es el quichua de la Amazonía, ¿no? Alituta tukui waukikuna, panikuna, ashkapara, chukanguna, shamushkanlichi. Ñukansa Quintaringarónica, ñuka profesor académico, runa académico, nishkamanda tukushkani, sakai problemas, tukui parihuchima partangaña. Good night, everyone. As David mentioned, I'm going to do an effort to speak in a different language that is not mine, which is English. But I was fortunate to participate in an English program in the US. And I would like to have the opportunity to share with you some ideas and hopefully have a conversation with everyone here in this room. So I have this presentation with you, and the title of this presentation, I call it Navigating Western Academic Spaces to Foster Napo Runa Thoughts. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, I will be able to transmit some of my personal experiences and ideas and how I was able to become an indigenous researcher and indigenous scholar. And hopefully, I know that there are some indigenous students from USQ and maybe from other universities listening. And I would like to encourage them to pursue this academic career. It's not easy, but we have to navigate, and learn and decide firmly if we want to achieve something in the possibility to help to propose another society for our indigenous people. So I will like to mention here that I resonate with the work with other indigenous scholars, with the idea of indigenous standpoint theory scholars. So I would like to read what they say here with this quote. Who one is and who we plan for emerges from long-term physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual connections with place. So what I'm saying is the research that I'm doing, I'm, have the opportunity to work with, not only for, with indigenous communities, is in the context of this. Being in the community, living in the community, smelling as the forest, as the water, yeah, having these spiritual connections, listening to the elders, being in the community, I think is very important for us to connect and to propose theories, ideas for the well-being of our indigenous people. So the research that I'm concentrated is in the Ecuadorian Amazon. In this region, we have is the home of 11 indigenous nations, of ancient indigenous nations. One of the largest indigenous group here in the Amazon, Ecuadorian Amazon, is the Quichua of the Amazon. But still, because in the conquest process, the Spaniards conquistadores, they force these different indigenous groups that exist and live previous to the conquest, they were forced to learn the Quechua language. The Quechua language was a tool to dominate in some way to these different indigenous groups as a way to lingua franca. So in order to have our unique identity, we try to say, call ourselves the Napo Runa people or the people of the Napo River, because surrounding our Napo Runa territories, there is a large river, which is the Napo River, that is a tributary of the Amazon River. So based on this, you can see here in this map, in these red color dots, you can see how indigenous, the Napo Runa communities are spread in those spaces here in these two provinces in the northern part of the Ecuadorian Amazon, in the provinces of Napo and Orellana. So I would like to mention here is how the key elements that foster my interest in research. So I would like to use this methodology of storytelling. So you will listening me a lot about personal stories, personal experiences, and I try to make them a space, an argument. So why this has been important in my process to become an indigenous researcher. The first one is this, what I call the bird and the snake metaphor. So now it is something that I can share with my students, with friends in different spaces and conference, but the sense what I felt and I saw when I had this encounter with the non-human beings was really powerful. Yeah, and I would like to call this attention, your attention in this one. So it was when I had 9 years old, living in a community. After school, my mom asked me to go to plant some small coffee plants in a new crop that we were creating in our farm. So it was very late in the afternoon, and I was sitting after finishing my task in a specific place, and I was enjoying, the canopy in the forest, in the trees, and suddenly I saw a white bird flying among the canopy. My mom was putting the last plant of coffee, and suddenly, uh, the white bird appeared and fell down directly to the ground, in a straight line into the ground. So I was following with my side when this white bird was, maybe it was ill, I can save it. So when I was looking at that direction, I saw just behind my mother and in that direction, a big snake just rolling and with just ready to attack and to jump into her legs and to bite her. So I just told my mom, there is a snake, but I didn't tell her that the snake was behind her. So she just approached, walking towards me and said, where was and she asked me, where was the snake? And I told her at that age, the snake just was behind you. So I am telling you that honestly, that if I didn't have that kind of signal, maybe my mother, and I wouldn't caution my mother about the presence of the snake close to her, maybe my mother will be beaten, and maybe I wouldn't have the opportunity to be with you. Maybe my life would have changed. So with that kind of encounter, a signal, I have been wondering, how is that possible that nature in some way is talking or giving a message to us? Is there a language in which the forest use to communicate with humans? So how is that possible? So I've been, my research is surrounded that kind of questions, and I will explain more about that in this presentation, okay? So the second element in my experience is the discrimination against oil workers. When living in the Amazon, because we are a large family, my parents told me that they were not able to support me to go for my university studies. They say you have to start working in somewhere. So my only option was to have the opportunity to go to work as a general worker in an oil company. So honestly, I will say, being there, I had the most humiliating, the worst experience, because for those supposedly called engineers or in charge of the task of the work in the field, for them, you know, the workers, they are not, they are just tools. We have to obey. They insult us. They treat us almost like a dog. So in a one night shift, when I was 18 years old, happened this in the about 3 a.m. in the morning. I was saying, and I motivate myself. I say, I would like to be an engineer also one day. If I had that opportunity, I would treat them well in a different way. Okay. So the other experience that motivates my research is this, what I call the Napo River boa or anaconda metaphor. It refers when after I finished my studies here at the USVQ, as David mentioned, I graduated as a geologist. So I wanted to work in an oil company, and I did. And but at the beginning, I was working as a community relations worker or supervisor. And my boss at that time, we went to visit a community in order to get permits for our company to enter to do different kind of jobs. So in a communal meeting, the president of this community told me, Fredy, hey, you're working now with the boa of the Napo River. He was referring to my boss. And I asked to the president, why do you call him the boa of the Napo River? And he said, don't you know? He eats all communities. So I asked my boss at that time about why they call you, you know, the boa of the Napo River. And he was just laughing. But later told me the story in which he said that he was also in his early career as a community relations specialist. And he said that in one community in El Eden now, it was the company found a large amount of oil. It was so profitable, but the community didn't want to allow the entrance of the company in their territories. So he said to their boss at that time, hey, why don't you allow me to just go to the community and stay there with a camp to bring medicine, because he's a doctor, a medical doctor, yeah, try to give health support to the members of the community. So he said that he was in a small camp, in tent in the community, and the members of the community were just like surrounding his camp, but not approaching very quickly. But later, after maybe 1 or 2 days, they start asking about medicine supplies or maybe medical attention. And with that kind of practice, he said that just few weeks later, the company entered into the community and was drilling and extracting oil. And he followed this kind of practice in all the communities where the resistance of the community was very strong. So I I would like to say that indigenous people in the Amazon, specifically the Napo Runa people, you know, explain their life with something that they are familiar with. And I remember this action, surrounding something with the action of the anaconda, you know. My parents and my grandparents told me that if you are a hunter here, if you are in the forest, and suddenly you start working in circles around something, you start looking and finding the same places once again. So it's a repetitive process. So if you don't realize, the person enters just by himself into the mouth of the anaconda. So because the person is hypnotized by the anaconda, and this person is thinking that is following a beautiful path and is going home. But if a person is seeing from behind, is seeing that this person is hurting, walking into the forest, into the deadly path. So that's why I relate why they call my boss the boa of the Napo River. The other thing that I would like to mention here is being in Quito, I was able to connect with other indigenous students. Now, so many of these colleagues now, they are professionals, leaders, they are authorities in different places, right? But for me, it gives me a strength because they were talking about sovereignty, territory, identity, many things that for myself I just heard, but was not able to discuss more in depth. And of course, La Universidad San Francisco de Quito, through this ethnic diversity program, helped me a lot. I remember, as David mentioned, I was able to, I really wanted to, I think, to continue my master's and probably my PhD degree later. So I had to improve my English. So as David mentioned before, I sent like 100 emails to different universities in the US asking for a fellowship. And one university, in this case, Yale University, offered me a fellowship, and they say, we're going to cover you the entire program. You just have to find travel, meals, support. So David, Diego Quiroga, and many others also put from their pocket, and to support me and go there. So that's why I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And also because the university has this, what they call artes liberales programs, yeah? You are in the opportunity to create, to learn from what you really are interested on. So I think the university gives support to people who really are able to make changes. And that's why I am very happy that we have students here, I think more than 700 students now. At the beginning, we were only maybe 5 or 6, I remember. Okay. So the other experience, there are many, but because of the time, I just want to focus on this, is I had the opportunity in 2008 to work for the national government. I was named as undersecretary for this National Secretariat for Planning and Development, SEMPLADES. I was in charge from 3 large provinces, Pichincha, Napo, and Orellana. The idea was how to planning in based on indigenous capacities of the territories. But the problem that I saw there is that the planning was homogeneous for everyone, indigenous, non-indigenous, Afro-descendants, many things. So I was wondering if really in that kind of planning is going to support the indigenous way of life. So I was worried about that. And that's why I want to pursue my master's degree in city and regional planning with that kind of objective. And the worst thing is in one meeting in a conference in COCA, the minister of this planning secretariat asked me in COCA, do the indigenous people have orientation of sense or theories about their life, their territory, things like that? So honestly, at that time, I was not able to answer. But for me, it was saying, okay, we have those kind of theories, knowledge, but we have to find, we have to systematize those and make put that in as a scientific arguments. So based with those ideas, I was able to create, but my research, as I mentioned before, resonates with the work of other indigenous scholars. For example, here I would like to mention Professor Emilio del Valle Escalante, is a Maya Quiche, or Emil Keme. He was in my committee for my PhD, and he's talking about this idea of trans-hemispheric indigeneity. The idea that even though that we face different issues at different scales and geographies, we have to follow what our ancestors used to do. They used to trade, connect long before the conquest. So we still have to do the same thing. Also, with the idea with indigenous standpoint theory, for us it's really important that knowledge is something one does rather than simply something that one knows. Saying that if we know something, right, we have to exercise it, not just know it or read about. And the other idea is this concept of two-eye seeing, right? We have two eyes. If we just close one eye, we just see one perspective, maybe. If we see with two eyes, different ideas, concepts, methodologies, you know, the idea is that we are able to refuse colonial capture, appropriation, and the containment of indigenous peoples as objects that cannot speak for themselves. So with that idea, for me, is really important the idea of epistemic locality, saying that place-specific activities that in becoming ritualized become the knowledge for organizing life decisions for what is yet to come, short and long term, and in relation to others, human and non-human, to what has already been. So for us, a specific epistemic locality gives us the sense of who we are. Okay, so based on that, with Professor Gabriela Valdivia from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who was my mentor there, my supervisor, Professor Gabriel Arce Nazario, also from UNC, and myself, we applied for some different funding, try to understand the cosmovision and how indigenous people think or relate on relate about a specific river in the Amazon, which is the Holin River. So we were wondering how indigenous people in a community conceptualize, water, the spaces along the river. But based on that research, we were able to also explore. At that time, it was very famous or known, the construction of life plans, which are like tools for planning the land or the territories from the indigenous people's perspective. Yeah? The government invested about $9 million in creating these life plans. So the problem with that is that it was more like a process imposed. Okay, I was able to participate in that in the construction of life plans, but I didn't like the process, so I quit. So we were thinking, what would the life plans communicate if they were based on Napo Runa language and ethics instead of this Cartesian state of vision of space? and how can these plans reconstruct territories to enable Napo Runa futures. So with that, we went to an indigenous community in Napo province, close to what is known one of the sacred and um, something, very sacred, respectful river, which is the Holy River. So we were really happy to connect with a local community, which is the Santo Domingo de Ojin community. So in that, we were able to have some decolonial research methodologies, creating more focus groups, semi-structured interviews, autoethnography, working with community, and incorporating these oral histories methodologies. So for me, as a researcher, I'm really happy because we are, incorporating those the colonial methodologies, working with the community to those spaces, intimate spaces in which they are relating to the water, to the forest, and where they interact with the human and the non-human. Also, we use drones in order to have a different perspective at different levels. And in that opportunity, we ask the members of the community in Santo Domingo de Ojin if they can map their community. So we were thinking maybe they are going to map just the space where they live, and they made this wonderful connection with, spaces long away from their community. For example, they are mentioning here is the Sumaco volcano. They are mentioning that from that is where the river is originating. They talk about, for example, the trees, the guayusa, the chonta, the importance of those kind of trees for the culture. They, for example, draw the different spots or spaces along the river, right? They put the different names. And also here is another map in which, for me, is really important because they are describing the different beings, what they call Yakuamu, yeah, these people, who are non-humans that are living in the water. They describe very quickly, like the anaconda, a very strange animal that they were able to see, and many things like that. Okay. And also in this community, we were able to connect with the Mama Yacta family. So Silverio Mama Yacta was the president of this community, the leader of the community, and we were able to enter through him. And this Mama Yacta family, they have like 7 generations living in that place. So they, from their parents, grandparents, they heard histories. They experience fishing, hunting, living in that space. So they draw these different spaces. For us, is really important. And we are collecting these different like narratives through the oral interviews. And hopefully the idea is to publish and they are going to be the authors of this publication, okay? So based on that, very quickly, I would like to say that we were able to have this publication in this Radical Journal of Geography, Antipode, with the idea of Causaita Puruntuna. I maybe if you are more interested, you can read it, or maybe you can send me an email. I can share with you this paper. But for me, following this decolonial research, for example, Rosa Alvarado, Tami Alvarado, they are our collaborators in this project, in this research. And I asked Gabriela Valdivia if if we consider them as co-authors. And yes, because they gave us a lot of insight, knowledge. They work together. They work with us into the community. So for us, it's a kind of recognition. And this kind of information now is going to be translated into Spanish. We are going to follow this kind of publication. So very quickly in this research, we are proposing and saying that, yes, indigenous people, we have theories, we have knowledge. We just have to find them because it's there, okay? So when thinking about communicative philosophies, for example, we talk about the word in Quechua, rimana. Rimana, for example, I'm speaking to you right now, right? Giving gestures, sounds, many things that is happening. But that kind of interaction is in the forest is with the whole sentient beings, saying that even the trees, the animals, in some way are being they are listening to us, and we listen to them. Okay, so that recognize that kind of practices is really important, and to recover the knowledge of these people. When we're thinking about planning, as the minister said, are indigenous people really planning or not? So we encountered that there is not a direct translation for the word planning. So they call this word causaita puruntuna, causaita puruntuna. If we translate into English, it will say, let's plan life together. It's the idea that represents a web of different kind of decisions made by as individuals or as a group, for individuals and for the groups, and in relation to other sentient beings beyond the human, individually and collectively. And also we are planning and proposing in this research the idea of living planning ecologies, saying that if Runa planning practices start from where life is lived, then they must be in relation to all kinds of sentient beings, human and non-human. From a Napo Runa standpoint, planning is about both conducting a good life in and with the forest, where the forest stands for land, rivers, and other non-human beings, and in dialogue with the Ecuadorian state. And finally, maybe I would like to have the opportunity to listen from your experience, and maybe we are proposing the idea of indigenous property regimes. Indigenous peoples are facing a lot of issues relating to the access to ancestral lands. But the canon says that if you don't have a written document saying that you are the owner of that land, it's so difficult to recognize them. But we say no. The Napo Runa experience organized property in diverse ways as a result of the centuries of long interaction with the non-Runa. They thus have a complex sense of property in terms of adaptations, mobile capacities, and relations, and relation with human and non-human beings, which is transmitted through our intergenerational storytelling. So also we are proposing the idea of Minga Kausai. Minga is a collective process to collaborate in a community to work together for a specific task, for a craft, for improving a house, many things like that. But we are thinking that it is something that is alive. So it's a living pedagogy for the Runa resurgence. Well, it's also a political, ethical project of being in and from the forest, and is give us the opportunity to support, to fight against the erasure and the elimination of us as indigenous peoples. So I would like to post in this part for you, how do you deal with having more visibility in academic spaces? So I have some issues dealing with that, and I would like to maybe hear from you, and also pressure to teach and not much to research. Honestly, I like to be more in the field, in the community, working with the community, preparing, interacting, and proposing many ideas and concepts. But the demand of being a teacher here in a classroom is something that I like. I like to teach, but if you tell me, I would like to prefer more to be in the field. And finally, my role as an academic researcher. So I don't have to, I am not able to be in the middle. Yeah, I have to always advocate. I have my heart for my indigenous peoples, for their fight, for their efforts, in order to continue to exist as ancient indigenous cultures. So saying with that, I will say thanks Thank you. Pagracho, Ashka Pagracho.
Thank you, Fredy, and thank you everyone for assisting tonight and listening to our speaker. And I just want to say at this point that I've always learned something new of what you're doing and how you are making us understand more of the world of the Napo Runa people. And so, do we have any questions, Adriana? Because I've been trying to. Oh, yeah, here.
In fact, it's a question from me. Maybe
It's free.
I also can tell Fredy sometimes. Well, this conversation, learning about you and learning from your beginning and how little by little you were like finding your joy, your way. My question is, what inspired you at the beginning? So, what is your advice? What was in your life in that moment where apparently you had your way to follow, but you decided to make a different thing? So what advices you can give to the younger generations to see you now in all your way with maybe everything was like kind of impossible, right? Even when you said about the language, but then you were accepted at Yale, one of the best universities in the world. So please give us some advices. What inspires you at the beginning? What inspires you now to keep a professor?
Thank you, Adriana, for your wonderful question. I think it's being one of the first indigenous scholars is a big responsibility. So when I went to the university here in Quito and also to in the US, it's like something that I have realized working with the oil companies. The oil companies say, okay, the community demand water, electricity, many projects, for the improvement of the community. We give them. What do they do? After some years or months, they destroy it. They don't know how to manage that. So in my case, it's like behind me there is a lot of people who are saying, maybe Fredy is going to fail. Okay, so I had this pressure not to fail. Okay, so the first thing. The other thing is that yes, indigenous people are facing a lot of issues. I was able to volunteer with different indigenous organizations as the Confeniae, in Orellana with the FECUNAE, with the FOIN, at the more regional level of 9 countries in the Amazon with the COICA. Yes, so I see how our indigenous leaders they are facing. They don't even have the opportunity to learn something, but they have this compromise to fight for the indigenous people's ideas, rights, territories, but sometimes they make mistakes. Okay, so saying that we have to find ourselves what is motivates for us. What in my case, what motivates is this, I think this value that my grandparents told me about the forest. Okay, how the forest is telling us and teaching us many things. And we now, because of technology, we are seeing other things. We are losing that kind of ability to connect with the language and using the language of the forest. So that's is my motivation. And my mother always tells me that if we don't do something, if we just get a degree and we have a wonderful job, because I did it in some way. And when I was working in the oil company, I get a good salary. They gave me everything, like a car. They gave us to mobilize in helicopter, in boats to complete our job. But I was seeing that our brothers, our indigenous women, for example, the elders, they didn't have any other opportunity to, to fight for their ideas, to territory, to defend their objectives. So I was thinking maybe being an engineer or a geologist was the entrance, but now I have to complete what my ancestors I wanted as indigenous people to continue existing and say we are here.
Okay, Fredy. I have a question for you. Another indigenous student that didn't graduate from, he came to the university, tried to graduate, wrote me a very strong and heartfelt message, telling me that although the university was very open at giving him the chance to learn things, it was how he felt in general living in Quito and interacting with people from the capital of Ecuador and outside of the community, what made him feel so uncomfortable. And that kind of uncomfortableness, I don't know if I just made up a word, was something that he didn't experience when he was abroad. He had the chance to travel and be in international meetings and be in another country. I just saw something that suggests that he even has an American girlfriend. So now you lived in the United States for many, many years, and you've been in academics. And I'm not talking about the university here, but I'm talking about your general feeling. How different have you, how different has been your experience of interacting outside of Ecuador versus Ecuador? Because I know that here in Ecuador, there's still very little value for the kinds of indigenous experiences, respect to indigenous scholars even. So in many ways. So please give us a little bit of that. And I'm sorry, it's a very long question, but you have about 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, David, for this wonderful question. So I will mention that I was able to be in two different worlds. Yeah, I was able to live in an indigenous community, in a Napo Runa community. But my parents, they told me that if we really want to achieve a higher education or have the opportunity to get to go to university, we have to, attend a school in the rural, in an urban area, in Coca, for example. Yeah? So I was able to speak the Spanish language, to improve the Spanish language, and to have friends, and to learn how they think, how they relate. So that kind of experience gave me this kind of insight. So, but it was not easy, even though my first time living here in Quito, I was living alone. I miss a lot of my family, my parents. I wanted, at the beginning, I wanted to quit. I wanted to just go back to stay with my parents because we are very close family. But yes, it's so difficult. But once something that motivates me to continue my studies is that I have to support my family in some way because they depend, what the children are going to able to lay their support and maybe to find a job. Yeah. When I was in the US, as I mentioned, there is a lot of stereotype for the indigenous people. Maybe I would like to share here is that the idea that you have to be strong. Sometimes David also tell me, I want you to be in the university, like, yeah, sacando pecho, something like that. So I don't feel that kind of person. Yeah, I am quiet, but I like to work. I work in different ways. So what I'm saying is that indigenous people, we have to find our way, what motivates to us. Yeah, sometimes it's not easy, but for example, I don't like to paint my face, to put like a dress, saying that I am an indigenous person, because I saw my parents, they didn't do that when I was there. Yeah, so I am indigenous because I think I live as an indigenous person. My identity is based on that. Okay, so saying in that way, I assume different identities now as an academic, indigenous academic. But when I go to my community, yeah, I interact with my parents, with my friends, with my relatives as any other equal to them. I am not saying that I am expert. I do other things that they don't do. I drink the chicha, I dance, I go fishing, go hunting, walking to the forest, drinking sometimes the ayahuasca or these internal ceremonies. So I think we have to, in some way, it's something that I share this kind of experience with my students. And hopefully the Programa de Diversidad Étnica also gives, takes into account this kind of experiences, because each student experience differently, being at the university.
Okay, thank you, Fredy. I don't know. I don't think we're ready to close. But yes, we are. Okay. So, David Tocayo, can you please put invitation? Fredy, thank you very, very much. And uh, I know that you're quiet and that you like to do things in a very unique way. And I hope that we have always given you the space to develop yourself the way you want to do things. So this is the
Thank you.
moment when I want to invite the people in the audience to our next month speaker. Verónica Figueroa Huencho. It's from Universidad de Chile. And she will be talking to us about governance and indigenous people main challenges from an intercultural and intersectional perspective. So the procedure for the ones for people who want to follow, it's you have to register, and please, if you enjoyed tonight's talk, I would like to encourage you to invite more people. We are open to the public, not only people from APRU universities related, but you can invite anybody. And this is a space in which we're trying to have indigenous people and indigenous researchers telling us about their experiences and how they have overcome the kinds of things they had to do in order to achieve the success they have today as scholars. Um, thank you very much, and thank you to our promoters, Noelani and Adrian. Thank you for giving us this chance to continue with this incredible seminar series. And thank you, David Quimbayo and Adriana Rojas, because without your help, we wouldn't be doing this in such an easy way. I wish everybody a great evening and a great day, depending on where you are.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Pagracho.